Hi, everybody. This is Allison from Alley Cat Creations. How are you? Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel if you have yet to do so already. And if you get anything from my work, connect the dot. An epiphany, a mind explosion, a new book to read, a new author to explore, artwork to create. Chicken! I have the chicken because it resets my camera. I know this is way off, but I did this one yesterday during our paint and sip. Please consider supporting my work. All the links are at the bottom of the description below this video. And alleycatcreations211.com. I promise I'm going to get things up on my website. It's just been ridiculous with life and craziness. Sorry. Completely unhinged is this awesome shirt. I'm unhinged. So on the website, eventually, I have to get this a little more fine-tuned, but it will be having a patriotic epoxy. I have to fix this somehow. I don't know. So some patriotic fun stuff. We also got pyramids. A whole load of pyramids down there. Paintings and all kinds of fun stuff. So please check out my website when you can. And eventually I will be getting more of the paint and sip. Sorry, my chair is squeaky. I will be getting more of my paint and sip stuff up. It's just been hectic, to say the least, looking for jobs and trying to figure out my life. Cheers to that. And lastly, 3D memberships is where you can support my channel. That way I can keep the internet on, the bills paid, and this channel moving, because without the internet and without bills paid, I can't do my videos. Maybe, but it'd be nice to keep everything on. So that's a really great way to do that. So my favorite authors, just about, they're top 5. The Curtis books, The Voice of Isis. It's gonna rain. It's hot. It's cold. It's air conditioning, heat, all in the same week, and my body can't handle it. That's why I'm completely unhinged. So the energies too, for anybody that's into the spiritual stuff, please just be mindful of your energy. It is wonky. It is honor your body. I know I'm trying to do better with that, for sure. I can't wait to get some time to go for a walk. I need to walk. Just do what you can. So today we're going to read chapter 18, The Symbol of the Serpent. And once again, before I even begin, because I don't even know where they're going to take it, I did not read this. It's like a reaction reading. Our beautiful serpents have been overcasted with evil. And most part before the Bible, things were demonstrated to be wisdom and shedding of the old and bringing in the new as snakes molt. So we have to look at, and so does a lot of other reptiles, we have to look at the biases that have been brought into the world, brought into the collective consciousness. We have to really estimate why we choose to look at the serpent in such a way. Is it a programming, a narrative, what a book tells you, or the galactic community would love to tell you, oh, it's the reptilians. But not all reptilians are bad, and we have to kind of let go and go into neutrality for that understanding. And yes, there are ones that are not nice that will eat you. I had one in the Stargate. But just like everybody in humanity, there is good and bad amongst all things. And when you see that God's in all things, that paradigm collapses really quickly because you get to see individualistically people for who they are. And then you can adjust your way of thinking and saying, well, they know not, or they're not on the same frequency as I am, and they have a lot more to go, and giving them a lot of compassion, or they're covered with a lot of darkness. Whatever you have in your brain that will represent what evil is to you, just understand, I think they're going to go in the direction I think they are, and I'm really excited to read this section. Symbol of the serpent. Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said unto that woman, Yea, hath God said, Ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden. And the woman said unto the serpent, We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God hath said, Ye shall not eat of it, neither shall ye touch it, lest ye die. And the serpent said unto the woman, Ye shall not surely die, for God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be open, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. Genesis. In the remote period during which both sacred and profane history admit the fact that the gods confabulated with infant humanity, the serpent was a symbol of this god Saturn. In Egypt, Sat, and later Saturn. Giver of esoteric wisdom, one of the Elohim, the sons of God. He is referred to in Job as the great initiator sent by the Lord to test Job. Oh, so much to say. The whole book of Job being the story of an initiation. From the earliest ages, the serpent was recognized as as a symbolic and symbol of esoteric wisdom. Many nations worshipped it as a symbol of the sun, the giver of life. Only during the dark ages of medieval history was it degraded and limited to signify the force of evil or evil. Devil! Jesus recognized the serpent as a symbol of good when he admonished his disciples, Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. The Assyrian priests were called serpents, as were also the Druid priests. The masters of wisdom and all initiates into the sacred mysteries are called Nagas, or serpents of wisdom, because by overcoming temptation, they are said to have cast off their outer skin and to have been reborn and born again, thus becoming sons of will and wisdom and immortal. They have met the great initiator and have wrested from him his rod of power. Again, the serpent is an old glyph for the astral light, the medium of both white and black magic, good in its spiritual aspect, but evil in its lower. The primitive symbol of the serpent symbolizes divine wisdom and perfection, and has always stood for psychical regeneration and immortality. Hermes called the serpent the most spiritual of all creatures. Moses, initiated into the wisdom of Hermes, called it more subtle than any beast of the field. The strange veneration in which the Orphites held the serpent, which represented Christos, may become less perplexing if the student would but remember that all ages the serpent was a symbol of divine wisdom, which kills in order to resurrect, destroys but to rebuild the better. Moses is made a descendant of Levi, a serpent tribe. Gautama Buddha is of a serpent lineage. through the Naga serpent race of kings who reigned in Magda. Hermes, or the god Thoth, in his snake symbol is Tet. And according to the Orphite legends, Jesus or Christos is born from a snake, divine wisdom, or Holy Ghost. He became a son of God through the initiation into the serpent science. Now, I'm going to go off a little bit over here in my own delineation, but I have upstairs needs to chime in. As we are ascending, many of us consciously, physically, we got to look at the lower kingdom. What does that actually look like? 3D. It's where we are. Our reality that we sit in and are frequenting in right now. In order to rise above the evil, you have to get into the higher frequencies. You have to ascend to get into the light. The great initiator, the great tester, was the one that everybody calls the devil or Lucifer. He's testing, not to break you and to put you in damnation, to bring you into an initiation to make sure that you are able to withstand the light. And many of us are going through that trial and tribulation right now. I know I am, with many of you that listen. We have to realize the nuance of, oh, this is bad and this is good and this is bad and this is good, when it's all just, if you take the attachment away from those words and definitions, it's really just an experience that you need to go through to gain more wisdom. And like this snake, many of us are shedding the old self in order to to gain the new self. How do you do that? You got to shed your skin. I mean, we do it anyway, like unbeknownst to us. I mean, most of us is human skin cells, but they bring it a really good point that down here is consumed more with the evil than is the light. We are here to bring in the light to consume the evil. But if you take it from a higher standpoint and ascend to your brain in 5D and look down, all the source, so it's just a test, and stop separating yourself from all of it, because you are both. And when you integrate your shadow, like Peter Pan, you're going to be better for it. Just saying. Sorry, I had to go off on that tangent upstairs. From time immemorial, the serpent has symbolized the sex force. Good when lifted up as Moses lifted it up in the wilderness, that all who were suffering and dying from the stings of poisonous vipers, perversions of the sexual force, might be healed by the by the vision of purity revealed by the brazen serpent evil, when allowed to crawl in the mire of earth, biting the heel of the woman and placing enmity between her seed and it. It is said that before our globe became egg-shaped, and the universe, in the universe also, a long trial, I can't see, I need glasses, a long trail of cosmic dust or fire mist moved and ripped like a serpent in space. Sorry, guys, right. I'm like, my eyes are blurring over and everything is going meshy together. I might be in another time delineation. Who knows? Thus, our globe was prepared by the serpent force for the great test humanity came to this planet to experience, the ability to control the creative power and create in the image of God. through the spiritualization and perfect blending of the separated sexes. This great lesson was learned well. This great lesson, when learned, will enable man to become as one of us, or divine. After man became involved in matter, as outlined in chapter 17, and the androgynous third race had gradually evolved through its various stages, the separation of the sexes took place. This, however, was not a sudden change affecting the entire race, but it was a result of a gradual evolution lasting through the entire later half of that race. This is symbolized by the story of Eve being taken from Adam. Solace. While he was in a deep sleep, the deep sleep being the Prailaya, or night period between the third and fourth races, during which the separation was perfected. The word Adam means red earth and refers to the third race in which the humanity of the red ray was first clothed in an earthly body. Adam and Eve, spoken of later as man and woman, symbolizes sexes functioning separately in the great Atlantean or fourth race. Hence, at the dawn of the fourth race, the androgynous forms of early third race had disappeared, and only separated sexual forms known to us today remained. Pause. Okay, not only is Blavatsky that I am reading this is like all synchronistic, by the way, by spirit. I don't make this shit up. We're tackling Blavatsky right here, but we're also tackling Awaspy and the Urantia book. Also, they note that the earth is red, so they're coming down in the earth on the red ray. And Urantia, they speak very heavily about the different Edens and actually what Adam and Eve were. So it's very interesting how there's a crossbreed between two books I don't necessarily align with, and Blavatsky, and now the Curtis books. Had to put that in there. And why I think Spirit is like synchronizing all of this together, because there's no accidents, is that we need to, as a society moving forward spiritually, we don't need to adapt any one story. We really don't, because we're here, we're in the conscious now. These are just things to take away from and to learn from in terms of perspective. If we sit in different perspectives, we get a grander picture of where everybody is at, and we can mature the understanding of what was inverted and the inversions that have been placed in many books, and not just one, many. And the interpretation is very close to this and Blavatsky, in my estimation, that there was different densities of matter that exhibited itself on Earth, and we sprung out and blossomed. The shoot, the little seedling, came out in fourth density, where we were androgynous but giant, and the good and evil paradigm started, because animals kill out of instinct because they need to eat. So do we, but we do it more consciously with too many labelings and other such fun. Sorry, had to go off on a tangent again. In one sense, the Garden of Eden symbolizes the pure and perfect physical body in which infant humanity was originally clothed. According to the same symbology, the tree which is in the midst of the garden is the spinal cord, the sap of which is the Kundalini force, serpent force, a dynamic creative power functioning through the spinal cord, its lower aspect being expressed through the sex organs, and its higher aspect functioning through the pineal gland. The fruit of this tree is the spiritual power gained as a result of an opening of that which is known as the third eye. As man through experience gains wisdom, he uses the mystical power gradually to become and bring about its higher physical manifestations as well as a psychic and spiritual. It slowly ascends the spinal cord through the central canal until it reaches and stimulates into activity the pineal gland, the functioning of which is called the opening of the eye of wisdom. It is not, however, the physiological change in this organ which opens man's consciousness to divine wisdom, but following the biological law, function makes structure. It is the attainment of the higher function which results in the anatomical and physiological change. Only through the functioning of the Kundalini power can mankind gain the experience that both good and evil have to teach. Yes! Yes! You need contrast as an artist. Look, you have black and white that makes a really funny picture of a lady with a butcher knife. You need contrast. Here in 3D, you need contrast. And if you don't have contrast, you're not going to gain the wisdom through your experience. If you got everything you wanted and the light was always so bright and blinding, you would not know where and what to do or how to step forward. You'd only be in the same comfortable place for so long you get bored and you're going to do evil stuff because you need contrast. That's the experience down here. So you got to forgive yourself for the things you knew not when you did it. You know, I'm not proud of a lot of the things I did in my life, but those were experiences I needed to learn from. Now I have the wisdom that gained from those experiences that I could walk forward and help other people see. And if not just see, seed the information. So when it is their time to heal or to come into an awareness that there's change that needs to be made, they could do so. And that goes for each and every one of you. It has to teach, detach the feelings. And that's not necessarily the easiest thing. And I know I get caught up in that paradigm way too easily. You're human. You're supposed to feel. And when you feel, you have emotions, and emotions rise. And here we are, full moon in Scorpio. A moment's thought as to these early symbolisms will show that there are an underlying meaning common to all: Saturn the initiator, Saturn the tempter, the astral light, the creative power of sex, etc. Namely, that it is, in very truth, the power to become as gods that is indicated. Being the distinctive heritage of the fourth race, this power to create sexually became at one and the same time the great temptation and the great opportunity. In fact, it was the one experience for which the globe was created for, which humanity fell into generation and became clothed with the coats of skin, our vehicles. The infant race at its onset was confronted by the initiator Saturn, the serpent, who was commissioned to impart as the crowning gift the creative power which humanity only then was prepared to receive. The so-called temptation was but a test of man's ability to either to use or abuse this divine gift. Ever since that time, man and women individually have had to meet the same test. Man created in the image of God and endowed with the God power of creativeness must prove his ability to use this power wisely, or through its abuse, learn the lesson and gain through suffering the experience that physical existence is in separated sexes alone can teach. The power was given him not as a temptation, but as a step in evolution through which he must pass in perfect purity. Just as in this day, a teacher who gives out a new advanced truth is condemned for the evil resulting from its misuse. So Saturn, Satan, has had to bear the responsibility arising from the failure of man to use the creative power in purity and holiness. Man has chosen to become as gods, knowing the evil through the misuse of this power, but the cycle closes, must become as gods to know the good. Fascinating. The culmination of his degradation was reached by the Atlanteans, who not only used this force for animal gratification, but also perverted it to accomplish their horrible practices of black magic. Sorry, my coffee is catching up with me. It was for this sin that the continent of Atlantis and most of its inhabitants were destroyed. While the sinking of Atlantis destroyed much of the dangerous knowledge of how to pervert this force into black magic or evil, yet enough remained to perpetuate evil and misery on Earth. Sorry. And make a hell out of what was given to man to be his paradise. The whole experience, including the sin and suffering which the perversion of this force has created, is an initiation not only for the race, but also for the planet, which, when successfully passed, will make the planet the completion of the octave of this system and the beginning of a new and greater system. Here we are. Here we go again. Here we go again. But the thing is, not like they said, not everything in Atlantis collapsed. They all went to Egypt, and South America, and other parts of the world where we see a lot of these ancient relics that were from that time frame. And a lot of good came out of those regions and a lot of bad. And this is where I think and believe the paradigm of separation and limitation came from in the greater scheme. The banishment of Adam and Eve from Eden was due to the fact that they could not face the flaming sword of purity, which turned every way and barred them from obtaining the fruit of the tree. This banishment meant that man could no longer dwell in the etherealized body, Eden, with his spiritual faculties freely functioning and able to talk face to face with God. Instead, the immortal soul is forced to dwell in a body of dense physical matter with the spiritual centers dormant, so that only by the sweat of his brow can he obtain spiritual bread. Yes. This means that only by laborious effort can man open the inner doors that communicate with the higher planes and consciously bring to himself the spiritual food upon which his soul must live. At every attempt to re-enter Eden, man is met by the angel of the flaming sword placed by God to guard the tree of immortal life from man's impurity. Thou shalt surely die is usually considered a penalty for man's defilement of Eden. But in reality, even this death sentence was but the working of an immutable law of divine love. For immortality under conditions of impurity, sickness, and suffering would be a punishment far surpassing even the medieval conceptions of physical hell. Only when man can face the sword of the spirit and allow it to cleave from him every cloak of impurity and once more enter the garden naked, but not ashamed, can he meet the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day. The cool of the day refers to the close of the cycle of wandering outside the garden. The day period, the period of stress and strain, of heat and passion, which both the individual and the race must face and conquer, ere they can obtain poise or cool, quiet perception, in which state alone they can become aware of the Lord God or the law of good, manifesting in the garden of their human personality. The so-called temptation was the act of one of the sons of God who was the direct channel through which the power to create reached humanity. The giver of this gift, Saturn or Lucifer, star of the morning, is a bright archangel who fell or descended from heaven to confer this gift of immortality upon man. Saturn or Satan, is the aspect of Jehovah which brought humanity its great test, and in this sense may be regarded as a temperer or initiator, while Lucifer is the aspect of that same force which confers the crown of victory of those who conquer. He's agreeing. There are many passages referring to him as one of the Elohim. This personification, denominated Satan, is to be contemplated from three different planes: the Old Testament, the Christian fathers, and the ancient Gentile attitude. He is supposed to have been represented by the serpent in the Garden of Eden. Nevertheless, the epithet of Satan is nowhere in the Hebrew sacred writings applied to that or any other form of Ophidian. His so-called fall was by no means one of sin or failure, but a voluntary descent to earth to bring to man the creative fire, the gift of the gods. For only through the mastery and proper use of this force can immortality be obtained. The story of Prometheus is but another expression of this ideograph. There is no evil outside mankind that can produce a Satan in the orthodox sense of a devil. It is only through terrible perversions of the creative power that it has become the evil or devil. As time passed, by his vile, lustful thoughts on this subject and his misuse of the life force, man has created a composite thought form, keyword right there, which may be said to be entitized into a living force of evil, commonly called the devil, which with any army of so lesser called devils, arrayed in serried ranks, continually fights against the power of good, God. These are the vipers that tormented the children of Israel and all other races. This army must be met by good and will be annihilated only when thought forms of purity are sent forth by man in sufficient numbers and forced to overcome the evil creations. Being the creation of man functioning in the lowest aspect, this evil can be conquered only by man, its creator. The conquering must take the form of transmutation and substitution of vitalized thoughts of love and purity for those of lust and evil. Okay. There's so much there. There's so much there. Yes, Hillel is with me. Archangel Hillel is Lucifer in his higher density form. And let me just say that he's excited that somebody wrote this. Why? Because if you go into many of the other people that channel Hillel, people tell you exactly this, exact, maybe different wording, verbiage, but still the same concept. He did not fall. He did not rebel against God. He volunteered to come here for a task, and that's to be our adversary, to show us the contrast that we need to be pure in source, or God, whatever you want to label God. And the thing that I've been stressing on this channel time and time again is that when you feed the beast, you're feeding the evil, you're giving it your energy, it's going to continuously manifest. When you know that the thought form is there, like the ghost, the evil spirit that's in your house, like when you pay it no mind and you just allow it to, you're not doing a good justice either. You have to call in your damn light and take your empowerment. Stand in your power to conquer that evil thing. And if more of us would do that instead of like, oh my God, it's about this and it's about that, and what are we going to do? I can't do any. Yes, you can. You get straight with yourself, go into neutral, go into your light, and do the work on yourself to stand in your empowerment and take control back. Only then is the angels that you are call down the other fractals of yourself that is going to take care of the evil. But most people are continuously feeding the evil because you're in a loop of a program. you can't get yourselves out of because you're obsessed with having information be spoken to you instead of knowing the truth from within your heart space and aligning with what your heart is telling you. There's a thing, you got to get rid of the ego, and the ego death is a layered event. And that's just skimming the surface of this. But evil is a contrast for you to overcome. Evil and the things that are contrived and brought out into this world is something for you to learn from. We all have those soul contracts we all talk about, but actually apply the concepts in everything. Then understand the only control you have is of yourself and the thoughts that you have in your head. And yes, that's hard when 3D hits you and there's things out of your control. It's about transmuting the evil into light. It's transmuting what makes you uncomfortable to make it comfortable. And these are steps and things that as a human, we are being initiated into for greater and better. So please understand when I'm talking about the concept of the good and the evil and the separation, this is exactly where I'm referencing to. And this is the first time I'm reading it, and it's spot on. We have to bring the purity and the righteousness in full force. The only way to actually literally do that is going within and bringing and literally facing yourself in the mirror and facing the devil itself that you created. All those demons that you think you see is what you created. And no, a lot of it's subconscious and unconscious, and you had no idea that you even created half the stuff. But there are lots of ways to get rid of these things. And as a humanity, if we all just started focusing on what we want and how we want everybody to be abundant and prosperous, and we kind of let the evil die itself out over there in the corner. I know you're there, but I'm not giving you my energy anymore. Stand in your empowerment. The world would be such a better place. In the childhood of the race, a great wave of serpent worship, originally intended to symbolize this truth in its purity, spread over the world. This, however, in time became degraded, and reptile itself was finally worshipped as a god. It was kept in a filthy den, and the youth and beauty of the land were thrown to its for prey. It was fed on human beings. There's the Draco. Until it grew fat, and stench of it filled all the temple, even to the outer courts. Humanity is again waking in the same old paths, according to the law of cycles, and today is but repeating the sad story upon a higher plane, the mental. First, undue exploration and worship, as witnessed in the days of phallicism, then materialism, and consequent defilement. Until today, the world's idea of the serpent power sex is that of a monster grown fat upon the youth and beauty of the land. The teachings in regard to the sex function have always been held most sacred, and for this reason, they have been veiled from humanity in general and revealed only to those whose purity of heart and life permitted them to grasp something of their deeper truths. Because of the veiling of the truth, there have sprung up in the minds of those not instructed in the mysteries many misconceptions, chief of which is that this great God-given power is in and in itself inherently impure and accused. This belief has given rise to doctrines which teach men to despise and try to kill out the greatest of gifts. But as long as the serpent of sex is accursed and degraded by man's thought, it is doomed to crawl upon the ground and bring forth its progeny of vipers and darkness and filth. And women is doomed to conceive and bring forth in pain and suffering instead of purity and joy. Women have suffered the most, but by that suffering, she should have developed her spiritual intuition. The sex force is considered impure only because the spiritually blind have decreed that it shall be considered impure. They assume that they are wiser and holier than he would create them. He who breathed into them the living fire of creative force. Being wiser than the gods, they have decreed that the normal expression of the sex function within the married relation shall be considered vile and that it shall be suppressed. The result is already apparent. Go over the world's history and you will find that after every period during which the marriage relation consummated in pure and holy love was regulated to second place in gaining spiritual development, and the normal sex function was taught to be inherently impure and calculated to hold back the participants from spiritual growth and final liberation, that it was something to be suppressed and killed out. There invariably followed a wave of licentiousness in which filthy substitutes practiced for so-called mere physical relief were not only condoned but taught as a preferable to the normal relation, and taught in the name of religion or spiritual development or occult or esoteric science. If such practices were advocated by the outcasts of humanity, the world would stand aghast, and societies for the suppression of the vice would quickly spring up. But when such perverted teachings are given out under the name of spiritual or esoteric truth, as though secrecy could make impurity pure, by those who are well advanced upon the path, many blinded ones forget even the common standards of morality and decency, and eagerly clutch at such an excuse for the gratification of inherent vileness under the cloak of esoteric teaching, which lends to it an air of respectability. The greater height obtained, the more disastrous the fall. The greater influence of such a teacher, the more serious and far-reaching the effects of the lapse from purity. Instead of there being any latitude permitted to those who are advanced upon the path of attainment, the rules are far more strict. What would be a slight lapse from virtue in a savage or in ignorant becomes a cyclone of inequity, sweeping many before it. In one who has entered the inner degrees of occultism, for upon each inner step, every vibration is multiplied 1,000-fold. This is why the disciple should absolutely master, gain perfection control of, not suppress, all life forces, he attempts to enter the inner degrees, or his failure is foreordained. Let this point be clearly understood that there can be no spiritual teaching of any kind, either esoteric or exoteric, that are not founded upon absolute purity, not only of body but of mind. The higher and more esoteric the teaching, the more rigid the standard of purity. All planes interblend, and all acts upon the physical plane have their correspondences upon all other planes. Therefore, what is impure on the lowest plane is 1,000 times more so upon each successive inner plane. If a pilgrim were approaching a sacred shrine, he would not knowingly enter with his feet slimed with the mud of a public highway and hope to leave no stain upon a pure alabaster floor of the inner court, for even the faintest footprint would be more noticeable than the filth that covered the public highway an inch deep. This subject has been a greater stumbling block for many teachers who are otherwise trying to uplift humanity, because it is the greatest test of the humanity on this globe. Only when the lesson is learned will others await it under different conditions. But there must be some brave souls who are willing now to face the world's misconceptions and slander and stand boldly for the uplifting and purifying of this subject. The world must be taught the difference between the wise, normal use of this function in perfect purity, in the marriage relation only, and killing it out or suppressing it. Many talk loudly about overcoming and killing out this force, but if you could look into their hearts, you would see that their overcoming is usually but satiety. They have crawled through the filthy places of life, have slimed their impure ideas of sex over everything until they have grown sick. Then they put out on monkish habits and talk loudly about having outgrown all such animal instincts. Many others have never known anything but the impure side of sex. Their ideals have been so shattered by contact with the world's misconceptions that they, in their natural purity, have put the thought of it from them as something too vile or to be considered. This shrinking from the subject is a natural result of the world's attitude. For alas, even those who set themselves up as teachers on the subject are apt to stir up the filth and leave things worse than they were before. This is invariably the rule if the world's standards of morality are ruthless set aside, especially those pertaining to the legal marriage relation, which is not only a sacred sacrament, a symbol of the marriage of the soul, the union with the higher self, becoming one with the Father in heaven, but is also a bulwark of safety to society that must never, under any pretext, be weakened. As to the final disuse of this function, as long as man has his present anatomical structure and physiological functions, he must learn how to bring to perfection purity and use for its highest purpose the body and functions he now possesses, and not waste time speculating on what conditions will obtain in future world periods. For only when new conditions are given him can he grasp more advanced lessons. It doth not appear what we shall be. I shall be satisfied when I awake with thy likeness. But we cannot awake until we have purified and used every function we possess for the glory of God. Hence, the Order of the 15 desires to teach humanity how to prepare for the future by taking the next step here and now. The time has come when women must take their place as the priestesses of the Most High. The reveal, God, I can't say the word. Revealer. There we go. I did it. Of purity and truth to man. She is who must lift the corner of the veil that hides the face of the Divine Mother, Isis. Isis is called the Divine Mother because hers is the force both in nature and humanity that brings forth. She is spoken of as having 7 veils, alluding to the protection thrown around the sacred mysteries connected with bringing into manifestation of the creative force, God the Father, sent out through the masculine expression. The 7 veils are the mysteries upon the 7 planes of consciousness and manifestation. The first and lowest of these veils, the mystery of physical birth, has never yet been lifted, nor can it be profane hands. In ancient temples of Isis, it was death to so much as touch the veil before her shrine. And on many tablets recently unearthed, a cavern serpent has been found having 7 heads, which symbolizes the same mystery. The Phoenicians are said to have originated the alphabets from the symbols made by the writings of the sacred serpents. This was another advanced creation and evolution attributed to the serpent god Saturn. For letters serve to manifest ideas, and their invention placed upon man a new step in evolution. Since through the ages, women has been made the plaything of man and taught to use her powers to entice and beguile him as the only method by which she could obtain her ends. In this new woman's era, she is confronted with the task which her training makes most difficult, the facing of herself and her real motives. For she must turn her feminine powers of love, intuition, and beauty to the upliftment of the race instead of to the beguilement of men, that she may satisfy her vanity, love of conquest, and desire for creature comforts. Although man, being the positive pole upon the earth plane by his superior physical powers, has throughout the ages enslaved women, still women, upon the more subtle plane of desire, has dominated enslaved men. Hence it is women who must break the shackles, first of her own desires And then for the race. This she can never do by playing upon man's chivalry to obtain the gratification of her own ends. By those ends, love, ambition, vanity, ease, and comfort, or whatnot. Many otherwise admirable women have debased their God-given instincts, love of home, and desire for children, first by awakening and playing upon man's animals' passions, as satisfying their ambition, and then by appealing to his chivalry, forcing him into what most inevitably proved an unhappy marriage. For quite as many men are blinded and led from the path of purity because of women's ambitions and desires as women's are led astray through man's passion. And until women awaken to her responsibility and understands her real mission, her power to play upon man's hearts, stimulate his noblest aspirations, and thus lead him to the heights of spiritual attainment and instead of into mere physical union without love. She will continue to be the slave she is today, in spite of any political or social liberties she may obtain. Interesting, and I kind of agree. It is women who must uplift the world's ideas of the sex force from the mire and the degradation of man's misconceptions and give this great power to its proper place in the temple of the living God, the body, as the highest expression of the divine in man, just as it was women who gave to men the apple of discord, so must women pluck the golden apples that grow at the top of the tree of life and give them to man to eat. And this ends this section. As I keep hiccuping. The age of Aquarius, we're here, and us women are unifying, I would say, more harmoniousness with men. Although we still see it in everyday form and function, that we're still not there yet. I know for many of us single women, myself included, we're waiting on the shift, but that is a shift that individually happens for each and every one of us to move forward with somebody on the same frequency that, or lower, but not too far down in the scope of frequency, that we will be able to see these purification and righteousness and doing things for the holiness of what it actually is. It's an act. But this was a fantastic chapter. And regardless of where the views are, you know, take it more on the Kabbalion stance as the divine feminine and the divine masculine. We have both within us, and we need to come into harmony with that, because some women have more masculine traits than feminine. Some men have more feminine traits than masculine. We have to balance out those concepts. It doesn't matter what's hanging between your legs or not, or up here. It matters how you're walking and stepping into your initiation and your ascension. We have to take the concept of good and evil, and I work a whole book through that, Nisha's book. And it's interesting to see the contrast between all of it. So I'm going to leave it here, guys. The next the next chapter, I'll give you a little hint. Purification versus defecation. Love it. Deification. Defecation. Sorry for the I seriously probably shifted somewhere in the matrix because everything blended and then brain started crossing hairs and it was not fun. So I do apologize. As we know, I am dyslexic and I need glasses and can't afford those things right now. So regardless, sending each and every one of you love, light, compassion, grace, shielding, and protective energy. Please go within. Be the shoulder, be the lighthouse, seed your truths, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Please light the path forward. Thank you for your likes, shares, and subscribes, your comments, your thoughts, your opinions. I love them all. Thank you, everybody, and I hope you have a blessed and beautiful night. Bye for now.